So let's talk about that PS5, guys. Like, I'm really excited about this, even though it's bad news. So yeah, that presentation was pretty bad, right? I mean, not only did they come out with bad news, they came out in the most boring way possible. It was like a really bad skit from like that Tim and Eric awesome show, great job or whatever. Like it's like a skit out of that show. You know what I mean? Like the guy sounded funny. He was totally like he sounded like he was bored about what he was talking about. He was not into whatever it was that he was trying to pitch. But man, the specs and stuff, like it is really the console wars are fucking raging right now. I have never seen there's missiles and shit flying. It's Call of Duty for the console wars right now. Yeah, I'm glad I missed it. That shit flew way over my head. So now here's the thing, right? I did my absolute best to try and learn about what happened. You know, what does it all mean? You know, what's the big deal? And what is it compared to the Xboxes? I didn't even really know what the Xbox had going for it, and I still don't really know. But how breaking it down into, you know, bite-sized pieces, right? My understanding here now that I've read and got all the shit. The PlayStation 5, the power ratio of the PlayStation 5, how strong it is, how capable it is, its ability to run stuff is measured in teraflops. I guess this is what a fucked up name, but teraflops is like a really bad way of measuring the power scale of a computer. So I don't know. It's not a good unit of measurement. But here's the thing. PlayStation 5, when it is working as good as it can, pumps out 10 teraflops. When the Xbox is working typically, not the best it can, but typically and consistently, it produces 12 teraflops. So right away, there's already this fucking shit that is going on in the console wars where the Xbox, out of the box, Xbox Sex is more powerful than the PS5. Which is a little upsetting because, you know, this is a weird thing that Sony likes to do, right? Sony doesn't always, they typically don't like to go down the common path. You know, the proven, effective path. It's like half the time they have to do something else. It's not good enough. Going down the proven alley is never good enough for Sony. Hence the PlayStation 3 fiasco with that whole cell technology or whatever. That shit fucking plummeted. There was no good. Programming for it was a complete mess. And so when the PS5 came around, they were like, all right, let's pull our heads back out of our asses and just make a PC like the Xbox. Boom, there you go. They fucking sell millions and whatever. Now they're like, okay, we have mostly a computer. What can we do to fuck things up a little bit? Just to kind of fuck things up in a different direction, right? Well, the Xbox is like, no, fuck that. We're just going to make it a really powerful PC. We're going to make it as good a PC as we can for whatever affordable price range we can do, right? They can do that because of specialized hardware, yada yada. Everybody's got an SSD. Great. Super cool. Sony comes by and says, okay, we're going to knock off the power ratio by a bit. And from my understanding, like, rough schematic wise, we're talking a 20% optimization hit, which sounds not good, you know? 20%? I mean, that's a number. That's a pretty rational number to think about, right? So, shaving off the power by 20%. What did you do to get what are you getting out of that? What is the bonus? Is it a price thing? We don't know. But we do know that they are really, really head over heels for their SSD. So now all these consoles now, this Xbox X and the PS5 have SSDs. We've had that shit in our computers for years. It ain't news. But with the PlayStation 5's version, they were like, okay, we got an SSD. It's fucking great. But here's the thing. It's even better than all of your SSDs. Not only is it better than your SSDs, but we have linked up more shit so that the SSD does more stuff for the entire console. which doesn't really make a lot of sense because really in PC world you have an SSD, it just holds all your shit, you plug it in, that's its job. It just holds shit. Like the RAM, random access memory, that kind of grabs information that shoots into your game, right? So your game rendering is kind of controlled by the RAM, GPU, CPU. There's a lot of different things that run the game. The SSD is not really part of what runs the game. The SSD just holds all the info, and all those other parts just grab that info and does shit with it to make your game go. So... we're all just like, well, what is the big deal of having an SSD integrate more intimately into the console? What does that mean? What is that doing? What's the point? What's the purpose? They are saying, Sony is saying that by grabbing that SSD and integrating it into the system as a more robust unit, so that it's speaking to all the other parts more efficiently, that SSD is 50% faster than what you have in the current Xbox Series. Alright, so now we've got, what? Something that loads things faster compared to something that is more powerful, right? We got these two different things. Why? Why? Why did Sony decide to do that? So, according to what I've been reading about, the PlayStation 4 had a really bad problem with data streaming. So, items that try to grab out of that SSD, it's no bueno. It doesn't work well. That's kind of the nature of of a hard disk drive or whatever, hard disk drive. That thing has to like search for info, right? Having an SSD is naturally just faster. And I think that alone solves the problem. But Sony, having heard the feedback from the developers, wanted to push it even further and make it more of like a unified thing. Make it something even more than just, here's an SSD, shit's gonna be fast. It's now like top of the line, your PC can't even get it kind of SSD. So, nobody really knows what's going on at this point because the console, for one thing, the console speaking to the SSD really isn't that huge a deal because the SSD doesn't run your games. It just holds the shit for other stuff to run your games. But they're saying that the SSD now incorporates part of that process so that it will have a more of a significant part in running your game. Does that mean that the 2 less teraflops are now being erased? Is the gap going to be closed because the SSD is doing more than what it standardly does? That's what they're insinuating. But a lot of people are like, that's impossible. That doesn't make any sense. Most likely what they're trying to say is that having this really buff SSD means that there are going to be significantly less load times, which is kind of a weird selling point because we already have really good loading times with just a standard SSD, which the Xbox Series has. So while that thing might take 30 seconds to load a stage, the PS5 is going to take 15 seconds. Okay, that's pretty cool, I guess, but, what happens when the game is fully loaded? What happens when we're in the game and we're playing the game and shit's going on? Yeah, 15 seconds still on, but it's like, you're already, the thing is we're talking about loading a level, right? So think of it like this, right? Video games are made due to the restrictions of the device that they're made for. One of the very common things that they do in video games is put in long, drawn-out sections between levels so that the past stage information and memory can be dumped and the next levels can be loaded up. This can be hidden in all sorts of ways, like forced walk-in chats. Like taking an elevator to the next floor or something. These are little in-game tricks that weave into the way that the game is made, based on the restrictions of the console. Theoretically, this SSD and its deep integration into the console itself apparently allows you to be able to stream things much more real time. so that you don't even need those I don't even know what you would call those bottlenecking moments. You don't need those. And they showed that off by showing how fast Spider-Man could, in the latest Spider-Man game, could swing through the city. Or I guess there was like an instant jump option where they were able to like jump to the other side of the map instantly without having to load anything. It sounds crazy, but at the same time, it doesn't sound very practical. Because when you think about it, no game can really utilize that with the exception of exclusives. Only exclusives are going to be able to build without those very common, bottleneck points. Those points are very important for the game to run on all systems. So if one console can eliminate those, but the other console cannot, and PC cannot, because that's just the way they work, then this benefit of having a faster SSD doesn't really eliminate those bottlenecks, does it? It really just makes it so that it loads shit, theoretically, 50% faster. Alright, but if we're already loading shit in 30 seconds, those 15 seconds make a big deal. And then in addition to that, when the game is fully loaded, am I going to start suffering from frame rate issues? Because no game ever releases with the target FPS actually being at that FPS, right? With the exception of maybe first-person shooters and fighting games, FPS is always taking huge hits when we play, especially like these movie games, right? Like God of War and shit. They're always taking huge hits. And the thing that I really hate is if I'm playing something that's already 30 frames per second and it dips down to like 24 frames per second or some weird shit like that. I don't like that. That is really jarring. It's upsetting. Like, it already sucks that we're at 30. And now we're going even lower because some dude launched a rocket launcher and now there's a huge explosion on screen. If that is what the PlayStation 5 is going to have, if it's going to, and it most likely is because all generations have had that, then the Xbox right now stands as a better system in that respect because it's going to have a whole 20% more power to keep those frame rates up there when shit goes bad, right? To me, that sounds more like the Xbox has the advantage. Personally speaking, I would rather have the ability to stay at my target FPS, or at least as close as possible to it, than have a loading screen load, 15 seconds faster. I'll eat the 15-second extra load time. I'll do that if it means that I could be closer to that 30 FPS or whatever the hell it's at, But this is all theory, right? Because nobody knows what the console actually does because they showed no games. So it's fucking crazy. It's definitely Sony, because Sony heard the feedback that data streaming is in. Data streaming. That's what devs always say, right? Maybe indie devs can now develop on the PS5, and maybe they're going to benefit a lot from it, because their games they don't tax the system. Indie games are designed not to tax your system. They're more bite-sized things. That might be really cool. Developers for small games might actually be able to utilize that level of data streaming. But who really cares about indie games, right? Like, who cares? I mean, maybe once in a while there's something cool, but for the most part, that shit is like shovelware. So, from my understanding, Xbox hits the 12 teraflops consistently. It consistently hits. I don't know if that means they have more room to push it for overclocking, but the PlayStation 5 only hits 10 teraflops while everything is at max load. It sounds like that's fine. The PlayStation 5 won't explode, but it sounds like the maximum is 10 teraflops. It's more than that, but it's only a little bit more than that. Whereas the Xbox is comfortably at 12 teraflops. I don't know if they're going to overclock it, if they have to overclock it, if they can. I don't know what the deal is. But their official statement is 12 teraflops. And then Sony's official statement is 10 teraflops. That's the official. Yeah, it's fucked up. Hades is an indie game, right? Fucking, what indie game have I even played recently? I can't even remember. But the thing is like, yeah, I don't. This could really flip itself on its head. So while this is what we see on paper, this is our theories, right? This is what we understand, the way things are built right now. It just seems like the PlayStation 5 will load things a bit faster, but most likely when it comes to maintaining frames per second, it's also possible, like, because we're still trying to do this whole 4K resolution thing, right? It's possible the PlayStation 5 isn't even going to try and do that. We don't know the severity of 20%, of this difference in teraflops. We don't really know. Because keep in mind, teraflops are a really bad way of estimating the strength of systems anyways. It's not accurate. So who really knows for sure until we actually get the games that come out. I know this is awesome because Freed is losing his shit. I'm loving this, every moment of this. I love this stuff. This is so cool. The hardware itself is probably really impressive, but it doesn't really matter to us if we don't have games. So that's kind of the point though, right? If we get some games out here and it ends up running really well on the PS5 and it ends up running well on the Xbox, it starts to make you wonder, like, what about these teraflops? What about this SSD? Did Sony figure out a way to connect the SSD to the rest of the system in a more meaningful way or some shit like that? Like, that is what I'm endlessly curious about. I want to know what happens there. I want to see this shit happen. I think it's going to be really interesting. But as things stand, I actually do think the Xbox is winning this console war. I think right now, Microsoft came out and they were just like, here it is. This is the shit. It was really boring the way they talked about it, and they showed this huge fucking refrigerator, but hey, 12 teraflops. Now Sony's come out and they're like, we can't show you anything because we don't have a console. But here's the inner workings, and this is how strong it's going to be, and here's the SSD. It's like, for the most part, the whole thing felt like they were just filleting the natural capabilities of a standard SSD and then saying theirs was better. That's just what it sounded like. It sounded like, not only do we have an SSD, we have the best SSD. It's like, all right, but are you going to lose some frams here? Like, I'm so curious about that shit. So, in addition to all that all this stuff, this is shit that's just been floating in my head, right? After all that shit that I just labeled out, there is one other thing to take in mind. There's some developers that have already come out and have said the way that the system is created, not just the SSD, but the way that things interconnect within the PlayStation 5, significantly removes certain developing bottlenecks. So it sounds like developing stuff on the PS5 might be easier going. But that also sounds kind of confusing because are you going to have to learn how to reprogram for the PS5? Because if you have to do that, then we're almost back with PS3 territory, right? You got to learn a whole new system. But maybe it's not that. Maybe they can just make an Xbox game, port it to the PS5, and then it just works, maybe? I'm not sure. But the developers are saying that there's a lot of cool shit, superior hardware, that isn't being talked about right now, that hasn't been released yet. So maybe we only got like a page of the schematic or something. But the way that they're pushing this SSD really makes it sound like there isn't a whole lot else. I guess really it just kind of comes back around to the first point. The way they just threw this out there in the most boring Tim and Eric awesome show way possible. It was boring. It was terrible. And all they really said was, it's an SSD. It's fucking awesome and ours is the best. All right, see you later. Man. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's fucking crazy. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm really interested. I want to see what happens. But I think maybe the Xbox is winning out on this one right now. I think the Xbox has a good... I think the Xbox... Microsoft actually came out and fucking... They came out, I think, at a time where Sony wasn't ready. I think Sony wasn't ready for Microsoft to actually come out with a console and be like, this is what it looks like, and here's a good chunk of the specs. Like, it was boring, but I think it's going to work. I think that caught Sony off guard. who knows? I mean, who really knows? I think at this point, if they hadn't released like an actual physical console, I think Sony might actually be hurting. Much like Freed right now. I love this shit. This is so cool. Fucking, I am so happy that I didn't stream that shit because I didn't know anything. But now, like, this is the wonder of the internet has consumed it down into something that makes real sense, right? On one hand, we have like this system that isn't as strong, but it's fast. And then we got this other system that isn't as fast, but it's stronger. And it's like, which one is really going to win out? And it's possible that Sony's got a little hidden thing in their sleeve, but Xbox is already like, well, we got way more teraflops, we've already won. You know what I mean? And everybody's jumping on that. Everybody's like, hey, the Xbox One, it's got the more teraflops. And it doesn't matter that teraflops are like this horrendous way of gauging power levels in the computer world. It doesn't matter. Everyone's like, 12 teraflops, victory. Which it could very well be. It's been pretty funny. Like, the way Freed is feeling right now is the way a lot of people that have built computers in the past feel, because there's really no reason or methodology for making an SSD be more intricately connected to the rest of the stuff. From my understanding, the main complaint is that they must have done something that hasn't been done for a PC before. And that's very scary because, you know, Sony is all about innovating shit. They like to do that stuff. But lots of times that they innovate shit, it fucking fails. And it does horribly. This could very well be one of those things where they put in a lot of effort just to get a minimal amount of speed. You know, it could absolutely be that way. It's easily possible that could be the deal. And so dudes like Freed might just be right. They're like, look, this is the standard. This is how it works, man. You can't break it. But Sony's coming out and be like, oh, we totally broke it. We have 2 less teraflops than the other guys, but, you know, just wait and see. It's going to work out. You know, they're just saying it's going to work out. And it's like, wow, all right. Show me some games and we'll see if it works out. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah, that's the thing, right? There's so many other processes that even if the SSD is communicating better than everything else, we're still relying on those everything else as being really good. And my understanding is that the RAM in the PS5 isn't quite as good as the RAM in the Xbox. So not only does it have more processing power, whatever, it also has another benefit in terms of that. Like, it's got a little bit of a stronger RAM size, which I believe random access memory, I think that is actually a bigger contributor for rendering distances, and I don't know if it's about maintaining frames, but like pop-in issues, right? Texture pop-in, rendering distances, I think that's more of a RAM thing, right? I think RAM handles that. But that's just like the random readings that I've tried to cobble together off the net, you know. Yeah, teraflops are such a weird measurement, but at the same time, it's all we got. It's the only thing we can really like look at and say, hey, this is how strong this shit is. Whew. But here's the thing, right? I'm not down for the Xbox, okay? Because I got a PC. I'm gonna keep my PC going. I'm gonna get a new graphics card whenever I can find a good deal on a new fancy piece. So there's really no reason for me to care at all, right? I'm gonna be getting a Sony PS5. That's just how it is. There's no alternative. There is no Xbox. I don't need a fridge. I'm good. I got a refrigerator in the kitchen. I'm all set. I will get a PS5 though, because, you know, I don't have anything else that can do anything on it. And like, if I need a new console, get the one that won't have crossover games, right? Get the one that's unique. I don't even want to mention exclusives. We should talk about exclusives, and this is all I'm going to say. Exclusives are trash. That's what I'm going to say. I think all exclusives are trash. Just by their nature, they're garbage. But in addition to garbage, what are they, right? Spider-Man and God of War might be the only games worth mentioning, and if I'm going to be openly honest and put my fanboyism aside, they're pretty standard games, right? Like fucking... They're just open world movie kind of games. It's, you know, fucking Spider-Man is just Batman. and God of War is just Uncharted and all that other movie-esque over-the-shoulder stuff. It's nothing to write home about. I mean, they were cool, but there's just nothing to write home about. They're just cool games on a system that really just was pretty underwhelming. The PS4, the Xbox, whatever the hell that one is right now, they're pretty underwhelming consoles. They don't do amazing things. They never really. I mean, the only things that stood out were multi-plat, titles. So I don't know. I mean, Street Fighter V, I guess, but ain't nobody, chomping at the bits for that. Maybe Street Fighter 6 will be something, right? I mean, we can have hope for Street Fighter 6 being really cool. It's fucking, I don't know, man. I'm really like excited because, like I said, I'm getting a PS5 no matter what, but it's exciting to see what's going to happen. And keep in mind, no matter what happens, video game efficiency is going to be boosted up, right? From what I understand, computers right now are going to be taxed. This is a weird number, but my understanding is that PCs are going to be taxed about 40% more with the introduction of these new consoles than they are right now. So it's going to take 40%-ish more juice to run your games at whatever current level you run them at. Right now, I can run my shit pretty much top, not really top of the line, but I can do pretty high. I can go high quality, not ultra, but high quality on my 1070 here, and it works really well. I don't think that's going to be the case once new games start coming out in a year from now. I don't think I'm going to be able to do high quality. Yeah, I have no choice but to be excited. It's always cool to see everything take the next step, right? Even though we're so far beyond the age of massive leaps in technology, coming from like PlayStation 1 to 2, Nintendo 64 to GameCube, like we're at that point where everything, the PlayStation 3 was really the last time where we had a major graphical upkeep, PS3, the PS4, it's not like a huge difference. And PS4 to PS5, it ain't going to be much of a huge difference either. I mean, visually, this is the way things play, the way things operate. So in that respect, there isn't really a whole lot to get excited for. But it's taking the step into the modern era. PCs have been up in spec for a long time. PCs generally get to stay that way, but the games don't. The games don't get to join the PC in the modern era. As soon as a new PC part is out, it just doesn't matter. It's just running, other shit better is all it's going to do. But now that we have a new generation, these consoles are going to match the potential of PCs, at least for the short while that they're new. You know what I mean? Before new parts come out. And like I said, we're hitting this point where things aren't really going to get much better. Things aren't really that great. And things aren't really going to get that much greater, but they are better. Like I said, 40% right now, we're talking a 40% level of intensity. So you need 40% more power to maintain your current level of performance on a PC. That's a big number. That's a pretty sizable number, and that's just because consoles are now catching up to PC. Eventually, there will be another gap, another. How long did this generation go? 8 years or something? 6 years? 2013, right? That's when I started streaming. And this is also a really big thing for me, right? I started streaming on a PS3. PS4. I started streaming on a PS4. And so, right off the console. Now I'm going to be moving off the system that kind of helped me get into this whole thing that I love doing. It's a little emotional down there, It actually... I mean, I give so much shit for this fucking share button, right? I think it's the stupidest idea in the world, and yet it helped me do this and talk shit with you guys, and fuck, how much can I shit on it now? Because this is what I like doing. I use this button for I don't even know, a year? 2 years? I'm tearing up a little bit, yeah. Wow. Pretty cool stuff. I don't know. It's just exciting. It's cool. Obviously, it's not going to result in anything amazing, but it's interesting to see. I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot of hope that this SSD is going to... There's one thing. Okay, I'll give this one thing, and I really don't think it's going to happen. But there's one other thing that we could possibly save Sony at this stage, right? Price point. If Sony is willing to take a price point hit, they could definitely pull this out. You know, $399 for a PlayStation 5. If they did that, and Xbox, I think what people are saying is like the Xbox was made at least for $450 or something. So, you know, they're probably going to sell it for $499. The PlayStation 5 is able to be made a little bit cheaper, I guess because of the whole teraflop thing. I don't really know, but it sounds like the PS5 should be a little bit cheaper, so they could sell it for $399. And generally, the cheaper console tends to win out in the console wars, right? Market-wise, people tend to buy the cheaper console. But they also tend to buy the earlier console, too. So if the Xbox comes out before the PS5, even if the PS5 is cheaper, I don't think a lot of people are going to adopt it. Wasn't that the case with the PS3? I think the PS3 came out much later than the Xbox. And people really didn't pick up a PS3. They were happy with their Xboxes. And it took a few years for the PS3 to gain traction, especially with the whole Blu-ray stuff. Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. I'm not really sure. It might have been the PS4 that happened. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, it could be one of those two ways. In any case, I mean, the price point is I wouldn't imagine it's going to be that. I imagine they're both going to be pretty much the same price. It's just when they release. And right now, it kind of seems like Xbox has their shit together, where the Sony is still kind of scrambling to get things to show. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. I'm pretty happy, but I am excited. I am happy. I'm excited.